First off, thanks for being here. It's the unofficial last Thursday of the summer. The weather is beautiful, and cryptocurrency market is down over 50%. But you're still here on Thursday night, learning about the space. So kudos to you, because if we did this about a year ago, even in January, we would have to get Master Garden to get as many people that want to learn about it. But I think the people that want to learn about it now are a lot more impressive because they're not in it for the quick buck. I'm glad to kind of speak to you guys. Like you said, my name is Fritz. I have a startup called Coin Gamma. We're a combination. We like to call ourselves the Bloomberg of crypto. We have a content site, so we have a website where we write content. We have a podcast where we interview people, some of the leaders in the blockchain and crypto space. But we also have a data side where we're building data analytics. So, my issue with this space was that, I used to work on Wall Street. Then I moved into tech. But when I got into cryptocurrency, I wanted to analyze crypto the same way I would analyze stocks and bonds when I used to work at Barclays Capital. And the data in this space was lacking. And so that's kind of where I got the idea to start the company. But yeah, it's an awesome space. Obviously, it's very volatile, but I think the fact that you're here means a lot. So I guess the question is, obviously you guys know why it's important because like I said, you're here on a Thursday with beautiful weather. But just to reiterate, what's the point of even learning about cryptocurrency? It's revolutionary technology. It's something that is a lot of people say that our time right now is mirrors what the internet was in the 90s. We're only at the beginning of it, even though, Bitcoin was created in 2009. So we're roughly almost a decade in. We're at the infancy, so barely the first inning if you're baseball fans. A good thing to do sometimes when you don't know what to do is follow what smart people are doing, follow what smart money is doing, right? So Andreessen Horowitz just made their biggest investment in a cryptocurrency-based startup this week. And like I said, the cryptocurrency market has been down over 50% since January. They still believe in it. Goldman Sachs, obviously the biggest and best investment bank on Wall Street, they were the first one to announce that they have a trading desk. They also have a venture capital fund that's been investing in cryptocurrency for years. So one of their investments is in Circle, which is a large cryptocurrency trading platform. Union Square Ventures, which is down the street, is probably the most popular venture capital firm in New York, and they are very active in the space, and they're led by Fred Wilson, which is a legendary venture capitalist. If following the money doesn't kind of pique your interest, follow the future talent, right? So Coinbase, one of the biggest trading platforms, did a survey. They found out that 18% of students have cryptocurrency. One of the biggest things that happened last year, obviously last year was undeniably, driven by a lot of fluff. There was a lot of greed, but there was a lot of energy. People really want to get into the space, and a lot of younger folks want to get into space. People that didn't care about investing in stocks, didn't care about investing in real estate, this was the first time they'd ever made an investment. And so, it's incredible that, almost one out of every five students have already put money into crypto. If you look at, it's hard to see, but basically this is a list of some of the top institutions. Stanford has 10 crypto and blockchain classes. Cornell has 9. UPenn 6. Berkeley 4. Princeton has 2. NYU has 2. So, and now you're here on trying to figure out. So you guys are also on that list of people that are taking courses and looking to learn. Just a show of hands, who owns any crypto? Okay, about 50%. So I guess we're here, blockchain 101. Obviously, what is blockchain? Blockchain is a chain of blocks. What are blocks? Blocks are digital containers that contain information. And the information is there without any centralized supervision. What does that even mean, right? the best parallel to, so we like a lot of people say blockchain, but they also use DLT interchangeably. So distributed ledger technology. Ledger is an accounting term that that basically looks at a history of transactions. A more basic parallel to that would be a Google spreadsheet. So historically, before Google spreadsheets were out, we used to use Microsoft Excel sheets. And so there was only one copy. You make changes to it, and then you email it to your colleagues or whoever has to look at it. Now you have something that's somewhat decentralized that many people could work on at one time. That's what the parallel is to what a normal database is to what a blockchain is, right? So blockchain kind of lives out there, and many people could write to the blockchain. And that's where the decentralization comes from, right? So if you look at a normal setup, right? So a normal setup has basically a bunch of devices connected to one centralized server. So when we're on Google or when we're on Facebook and we either put up a status update, that status update goes to Facebook's centralized server, and then Facebook redistributes it out to everybody else. Imagine if we were able to kind of like send it out and it automatically went to a wide array of individuals without Facebook being in the middle, right? And so obviously the biggest use case that we know around blockchain is around money, right? And so money historically has a centralized party. So even when I use Venmo, which is digital, Venmo hooks into my bank account, who then hooks into your bank account, right? But now in this case, Venmo is not even in there. I'm just sending you the money directly, right? And so this is the decentralized model where everybody's kind of connected to each other. Obviously, I don't want this to be one way, and I know that I might have used some terminology, it may not be that clear. Anybody has a quick question, or is there any part of that I should kind of spend more time on? Okay. So I guess another question is what Bitcoin versus blockchain. Everybody uses those two things differently. What's the difference? Why does it matter, right? Obviously, Bitcoin is a digital currency that runs on the blockchain, and it cannot, without the blockchain, Bitcoin cannot exist. The reason why it cannot exist without blockchain is that when Bitcoin was created, it was like, if there's something digital that I send to you, if I send you an email or I send you a PDF file that I created on my computer, how do I know that, and I tell you, oh, well, this is worth something, right? How does a person know that I just didn't make 10 copies of that and just send it to 10 people and then all automatically say that that's what it is, right? That's the reason why up to this point, anything digital cannot be considered money, right? Because money has to be scarce. You have to make sure that people cannot double count it. You have to make sure that the person that sent it actually has what they have. And that's where the ledger comes in, right? And so that's why banks are involved, right? So when I have my Bank of America account sending you money via Venmo, if I only have $10 and I try to send $10 to two people, it's going to break the second time, right? Blockchain technology kind of takes what Bank of America does for us in that scenario and puts it on this. And so leveraging that allows you to take something that's digital, make it scarce, and you can make anything into money on that end, right? So money, like, what is money in general? Money is basically what people say is money, right? So, the US dollar is money because it's backed by the faith of the government, right? But like we all know, the US dollar is not the only currency in the world, right? So, just the past couple of weeks, we see in Turkey, they have a currency and people are not believing in it, and so it's being devalued, right? People use art as currency. People have used salts and sugar as currency. I like to argue that basically half the world was basically discovered because people were so into spices, right, and wanted to kind of get to India, and they ended up in the Caribbean, or they ended up in Africa, and obviously there was a lot of civilization that was expanded. But it's pretty interesting. But at the end of the day, the reason why Bitcoin is of value is because, quite frankly, people say it's of value. But the only reason why it's usable and people cannot cheat the system is because of blockchain. When it comes to crypto, Bitcoin is the gateway drug. It's the first thing that people kind of step into. It's the first large cryptocurrencies, the first cryptocurrencies, the first use case for the blockchain. But there's over 2,000 coins out there. Why can anybody create a coin? I mean, Product School could create their own coin tomorrow and just make people use their coin to buy the courses, right? Why is that even possible? The reason why it's possible is because Bitcoin is open source. Ethereum is open source, right? So meaning that they take the code that you use to create the coin is actually consumable for the world to see, right? So anybody could take it, tweak it, and then make it their own, right? And just kind of introduce it. That's why we have so many coins that's created out there, especially last year with the ICO's initial coin offering hype. People were doing it all day because they saw it. Some people were actually legitimately trying to improve on the technology because they saw limitations with Bitcoin, limitations with Ethereum. But a lot of people were just trying to like take money from people, right? And so that's why you saw like this big run up, and now you see the market has kind of pulled back quite a bit. Sure.
Is that different from mining?
No. So I guess mining. Sorry, I should probably talk about that a little bit. So like I said, the blockchain is almost like this Google spreadsheet that has all the transactions, right? But obviously a Google spreadsheet, it's cool that everybody could write to it, but then like somebody could put a cell in and then somebody could just change it tomorrow. And so like I could say, I could have had 10 Bitcoin yesterday and then go on the spreadsheet and add a 0 and have 100, right? So just because it's decentralized doesn't make it good, right? What makes it good is that it's decentralized and the verification can be decentralized. So the verification of these transactions happens through a process called mining, right? And so mining basically they try to use it. It's kind of obviously copied from gold and silver and stuff like that, and people like to say this is digital gold. Mining means I as a person say I want to put up my computer or my internet access or my energy and say I'm willing to be a validator to transactions, right? Why would anybody just want to be a validator? The reason why they want to be a validator is because they get a fee. So you could basically get Bitcoin just for offering your I could just hook in my, I mean, it doesn't work anymore, but it used to work where I could just hook in my MacBook and basically download some code and say I validate. And what happens is when transactions are happening on the blockchain, it basically gets shouted out to the network, and people say, and they says, all right, well, I just sent one Bitcoin to her. We need the network to validate it, right? And so everybody that kind of raises their hand and say they're a miner, they'll validate it, right? The question is, how do you know who validates it, who gets the fee? The way that you get the fee is that there's this mathematical equation. That's where the cryptography comes in. Basically, your computer has to like solve a math problem the fastest. Then it says, all right, well, then the system says, all right, that person basically solved the mathematical puzzle first. That person gets to be the validator, and therefore that person gets a part of the fee, right? And so the reason why I said that I used to be able to do this on my laptop is that in the beginning, you didn't need that much computing power to do it because the network was small. But obviously, over the past few years, with Bitcoin being more valuable, the competition to become miners and get those fees have gone up. So now people are having like servers, and people are testing all type of different technologies in order to have the power to perform that calculation as fast as they could and win that prize, so to speak.
The people who mine, like the cryptographer who write the code, are they different from blockchain engineers, like who build this? Like, is there a difference in professions?
They are. They're different because every coin basically has its like own mining algorithm. So it was created when the blockchain was created. So like, let's say, what's your name?
Ta.
Ta. So the Ta coin. right? So you create Talcoin and you create your own blockchain and how it will work. You will in the code that you make, you will create what I guess the standard is for people to be able to get fees, right? So that's already fixed once it is. So then the people that want to kind of get Talcoin, they kind of code their computer to basically compete for the calculation you have, and that's it. So that, I mean, miners, so the people, blockchain engineers, blockchain developers create the coins. Miners just see what is already created and kind of create a hardware structure that could kind of basically compete on that. It's almost like you created an equation, right? And so one blockchain has an equation that's based on algebra and one has equation based on I don't know, trigonometry. Like I just know, all right, well, trigonometry, like I'm not trying to solve for x, I'm trying to solve for cosine or what have you, right? And so like I'll code my computer to do that. But now it's like you can't really use a computer. It's not really a computer. Like it's a computer, but then like there's like a lot of machines behind it. It's almost like a large server farm that you have to do, depending on how competitive the coin is. But yeah, it's two different skill sets.
What stops the miner from like wrongfully validating something, or is it just that they're removed from the actual transaction and don't know the people?
Yeah, well, because it's mathematical, they can't cheat it. So I mean, they can't.
Oh, they just need server power.
They need power, yeah,
And
yeah.
they download code that runs all on its own. They're just providing power.
Right,
They're
right.
not providing like any type of actual validation thing that's built into it.
No, the computer's doing it. They're not verbally doing it. But that's a good point. So what happens is because it's gotten so competitive to be a miner, you have there are certain firms that well, certain places and firms that have advantages. So it takes a ton of energy to mine Bitcoin. So you know, if you were to try to mine Bitcoin in this room, like a few fuses will probably pop because it would be tough. So a lot of like places that like Iceland, places that have like clean energy that's either free or subsidized have advantages. Places that create hardware that are used for other things. So like basically the biggest miners are actually in China, and the biggest company, one of the biggest companies called Bitmain, and they actually make like this kind of machine that mines crypto for you. It's like made for that, and they've gotten so good at it that instead of selling it out, they'll just use it for themselves. So what the controversy is that a lot of times they're basically like it's almost if I'm selling the market iPhone 5s, but I have the iPhone 7 in my pocket. So like I mine, and then like once I have the iPhone 9, I'll sell the iPhone 7 to everybody else, and then they're trying to compete with my iPhone 9. Right, so that's some of the controversies that happen. So even though it's decentralized, people are worried that if they keep doing it, they can get a majority of the mining power, or they call it hash power, and then they could just like basically do what they want because they could be the transaction and the validators. Right, we're a long way from doing that, but obviously this space is so new, and there's always conspiracy theorists. So you know, we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I mean, this is. To the last thing we was talking about, this is Venezuela. So, you know, nobody was really checking for Bitcoin that much. This year, it's gotten humongous because people they're not looking for it to get rich. They're looking for it to survive or to get the things they need. Bitcoin is the first and most popular one. There's over 2,000 coins out there. I personally believe that 99% of them will be worthless in the next few years.
Why would in these countries that are experiencing economic problems, why would their currency drop against the dollar but not against Bitcoin? In other words, why would
they've dropped over against Bitcoin too.
Okay.
But I mean, the thing is, if it's dropping, the earlier you could switch it out to Bitcoin, the better.
Okay.
Right? Because what happens is as it's dropping, bread becomes 10 times as more the more time it goes. But if you got into Bitcoin early, or the earlier you got into Bitcoin, like you now you have like that fixed buying power, so you don't have to worry about that as much. So Ethereum is the next most popular one. A lot of people ask, all right, I hear about Bitcoin, I hear about Ethereum, what's the difference? So Bitcoin is basically like, it's Boolean. So for people that don't know, I mean, Boolean obviously is more of a computer science term, but Boolean just means binary, 0 or 1, right? That's it. Ethereum is Turing complete, meaning that it could be a lot more complex. And what I guess why that matters is that basically Bitcoin just basically can tell you like whether somebody has it or not, right? So it's good for like a transaction, like me sending you money and that's it. So my balance goes down, your balance goes up. It's just kind of a basic thing. Ethereum is a lot more complicated. It can be a lot more complicated. So Ethereum allows you to write programs on top of it. Ethereum allows you to do smart contracts. And so what is a smart contract? A smart contract is a contract that could basically exercise automatically, right? So we know regular contracts, if something happens in a regular contract, you have lawyers that write it, you have to go and get, if it's a house, you have to get a title search, all that kind of stuff. I guess I'm looking at that right now. So basically, like a smart contract is similar to a vending machine, right? So I go to the store, I give them $1, I get Coke, right? But somebody was doing that. Like somebody like took the money, put it into the cash register, and saw me retrieve the Coke from the refrigerator and put it, and then we kind of do it that way. But a vending machine is like, all right, I put the $1 in, the machine programmatically sends me the Coke right then and there, right? And so that's a very simple example, but if you could do that programmatically, there are so many things you could do, right? And it could be a lot, you could build things on top of each other, right? So when I told you about those 2,000 coins that are being created, a lot of people are creating coins on top of Ethereum because you can almost do like all type of permutations, right? Because at the end of the day, code and most of the internet is just math, right? It's like a bunch of if then that's that kind of get packed on top of each other. So people are creating all type of stuff on Ethereum. So when it comes to like, when you look at crypto, when you look at what is actually used for different things, Bitcoin is not that useful for much other than, most people are just using it as kind of like a gold storage, kind of like a commodity. Some people, obviously, like in Venezuela, Turkey, what have you, are using it for money. Ethereum, people are actually coding on top of it, right? It's almost as if, it's almost like a coding language like Python or HTML or what have you. Like people, just the same way you build websites on top of languages, people are doing that on top of Ethereum. The only problem with Ethereum and a lot of these cryptos is that they don't scale very well. So like if you do have something where a lot of people are using it, the network, quote unquote, could be slowed down, right? And so the reason why the network could be slowed down is because you need everything that happens needs to go out to this blockchain network. People have to validate it, then the thing can happen, right? And so in theory, it sounds like it's something that could be happen quick, but in actuality, it actually could take quite a bit of time because you need enough people to be validating things and things of that sort. And what happens with Ethereum is there's so many things that are trying to happen on top of it. It's as if you took your laptop and you had 10 different Chrome windows and then you had all these tabs. You know how your computer gets slow when you do that? It's the same kind of thing because it's almost like a decentralized computer versus a decentralized money network or bank. So hypothetically, you can create your own better version of Ethereum. But what happens is the reason why you have so many coins is actually you have other people that are trying to create better Ethereums, right? So there are other options. So like there's something called Stellar, there's something called Neo, there's something called Stellar EOS is another one that's popular. So these are all. So you have coins that are trying to be better currencies than Bitcoin. You have coins that are trying to be better smart contract platforms like Ethereum, and then you just have this kind of like this arms race. And you have a bunch of engineers that are trying to code that one and try to make it better. You have another one, and then what happens with this space is when people are buying into it, it becomes like people betting on what technology is going to take over.
So I guess not to distract the class,
Yeah.
but if I'm smart and I'm trying to launch my own project, I'm better off if I'm worried about scale, I'm better off just tagging into somebody else's, coin using Ethereum or the Ether to roll with my project and not.
Yeah, that's what most people are doing, but some people are realizing that Stellar is a better option.
Sure.
Like for instance, even large companies, so like IBM has a blockchain initiative. I actually met with the person that runs it earlier this week, and she said, yeah, they were trying to, and their thing is they're building blockchain technologies for other Fortune 500 companies. And they were like, we wanted to build our kind of corporate blockchains for our clients on top of Ether, but it's just too slow. And so they kind of they're part of a consortium that's creating their own called Hyperledger. So, what we're seeing right now in the market is just like a bunch of technologies being kind of battling with each other and trying to be created. It's like this happened in the beginning of the internet. People were trying to figure out what protocols are best, but HTML won out, JavaScript won out, right? There's so many different ways you can build out websites, but the whole world kind of like over time kind of collapsed and combined over different technologies, and those became the kind of like the standards. So that's where we are right now. So it's basically like different technologies betting against each other, or people trying to figure out what's best. But I guess which brings me to the other point, right? So like Ethereum, while it's limited, has a huge community of people, right? So a lot of the smartest engineers are going there. So the theory is like you have a bunch of smart people in a room, and they kind of bang their heads against each other as for the longest period of time. They're going to make things the best because they're going to kind of compete with each other and sharpen each other out. Not too many coins have that. Like for instance, there's a firm called Consensus, which is like a huge firm based in Brooklyn. They have about 1,000 people, and all their thing is like the person that created it was one of the founders of Ethereum. He became a billionaire. He took his own money and created this large organization, and all the organization does is build things on top of Ethereum, whether it's building startups, whether it's advising companies to use it, advising governments. So like they have a team that goes to Saudi Arabia that is pushing Saudi government to leverage Ethereum. They just open up office in Israel. They have in Ireland. They're trying to become kind of like the Y Combinator / McKinsey of the space. So yeah, I guess I was. This kind of talks about the course, but before we go there, I guess I've been speaking a lot, and obviously I appreciate some of the questions. But does anybody have any other questions? That's like the only formalized part of it.
Yeah, just going back a little bit earlier from what you were talking about, the way Bitcoin works with a ledger and how all the transactions are recorded. When you hear about these hacks of Bitcoin being stolen from wallets and everything,
Sure.
If everything's tracked, then how is that happening?
Good question. So there's two. So what's happening with the wallet? So the hacks happen on wallets and they happen on exchanges. So the blockchain is the blockchain, but what gives you access to whatever you have on a blockchain? Let's assume you're a person, is basically I guess to parallel it, it's like our emails. Like my Gmail is not in my pocket, right? If my Gmail is on Google servers, and I can access it with my email address and my password. It works the same way for crypto. So your Bitcoin holdings are actually on the blockchain all the time. It's always like on this decentralized server. But what allows you to access it is it's a public key and private key. So public key is like your email address, private key is like your password. And if somebody has access to that, they can just grab your stuff. And there's ways to trick, just like I could trick you to get your credit card information, or I could trick you to get your email password. There are people that you could either hack into your computer. Maybe there's many ways where you can be tricked into giving up your public and private keys, and that's what usually happens.
But wouldn't there be an electronic trail somehow of where that Bitcoin was moved to?
Yeah. So there is. I mean, the problem is legal. Sometimes for the largest ones, I mean, so that. I guess there's two big hack issues. It's people, but more importantly, what you probably inherit is our exchanges. Because what happens when people trade on exchanges, the exchanges have basically people's keys, and then if people could hack an exchange, and then you could have access to billions of dollars, right? So let's say if Coinbase was to get hacked, that'd probably be upwards of $500 billion that somebody could take, right? But the reason why they're Coinbase is they've done things to kind of protect against that. But yes, there was a large hack that happened to a cryptocurrency exchange earlier this year in Japan. They were able to track it by looking at the different wallets that the coins were going to, and kind of track the person. But you have to be quick, you have to be good, you have to have law enforcement that's going to be along with it. If that was happening to the U.S., it probably wouldn't work out. Like NYPD, FBI are not synced up with the cryptocurrency space well enough, and you have to be very, very fast. Because I mean, somebody could like do something where like they take it, put it into one wallet, then fast move it to like 500 different wallets, then like it could become like this cat and mouse game. And as the space grows, hackers would be, as the space becomes more sophisticated, hackers are going to be even more sophisticated. Sure.
Can you talk about some of the use cases today or in the very near future that are other than the currency markets?
Sure. There's a lot. People are using the blockchain to track, right? So, we remember how Chipotle had a big issue because, there was E. coli, they didn't know where the lettuce came from. What people are doing is they're basically stamping produce, putting that on a blockchain, and using that to track where something came from. So that way, if there is something like that that happens in the future, people know, well, like that fish came from, that fish farm, or that piece of tomato came from there. It's almost like, I guess what's happening between companies, people are realizing like, historically, Chipotle would have its own database, and so they would see the boxes, right? But then the person that gives them the stuff, let's say it's Farmer Joe in Montana, you don't know if Farmer Joe has the same code, they may code their produce on 5 digits, and you may do 100 digits, whatever, right? So using the blockchain, you kind of just centralize it, and you can track it, and you can see what's going on. So people are leveraging the blockchain to kind of go between different things. In general, technology, one of the leaders in technology is usually gaming. Actually, if you look at some of the different technologies that came up before, there's a lot of different things that are happening with gaming. For instance, people that are familiar with Second Life, basically like you basically have this decentralized world where people could buy things. You have a character and you could buy a coat of armor or what have you, right? It sounds silly, but people actually spend money on that kind of stuff, right? You could kind of have that kind of stuff on the blockchain where you could take your character and put it into another game. It's historically let's say you play Candy Crush, and you'd have to just use all the things, the digital stuff you use on Candy Crush. Now you could do it off of Candy Crush. To be on the more serious side, there are things that are happening in finance, right? So people are trying to use the blockchain to digitize equity, right, or digitize hard assets, right? So historically, if you had an apartment building and you wanted to share ownership around it, it would be a lot of legalities around it. It would be hard to track the folks. People are trying to figure out, how can I take that blockchain ledger and take asset like that, split it up, and then the ownership will be there, and it can be tradable, right? So people are taking these coins and actually putting it on top of real assets. What else? I mean, there's so many different things that people are testing.
Is coin blockchain, or is a coin just one thing that's built on blockchain? And
The coin, or some people use coin, some people use token, depending on the project. That is the blockchain is kind of like the environment, and that's what's being passed around in the environment to basically compensate for resources, right? Because if you didn't have a currency, how would you know what transaction goes first? How would you attract people to validate transactions? But yes, it goes on top of it. So the blockchain is the Bank of America and Chase, and the coin is always the dollar that goes between those players. But in the example I was giving him, when you have blockchains that are within corporate environments, you don't need the coins because it's kind of like all trusted parties, right? So a lot of times, let's say Chipotle was to use the blockchain for something, all the trusted parties would be probably the business partners. So you don't have to like compensate. You're just like, all right, well, this is the technology we're going to use. So it's not really decentralized. It's quasi decentralized because it's like between trusted parties, but it's a lot better than what they have now. So you're having different use cases.
How do you see blockchain used in healthcare?
Obviously, electronic medical records are here.
Individuals, can they, I don't understand that part of like, how can I become responsible for my own medical record once it's been taken out from the hospital, let's say?
Sure. So I mean, you can the records can be electronic, put on a blockchain, and you could be the only person that has the keys to it. And then when you go to see your dentist, you can give the person your access to your, I guess your data, and then once you left that office, you could pull that data access from that individual.
So both me and the doctor's office have to have this kind of technology that allows this to happen.
Right. So yeah, if it's only you, then I mean it's just like, you know, it's just like your pocket. Like, but if it's something that you need other people to view, you would have to have it that is open, but you could control the access.
And in that example, if you have like a token or a coin or something, which you hand it to, or she pass that to the doctor's technology.
She probably would pass the public key.
Okay.
Yeah, which is like her email address.